Welcome to the Bear Collective podcast, where we meet you at the edge of what you know and dance with you into the depths of what you don't in all things personal development, relationships, and lifestyle. I'm learning it off by heart. Feel free to take what you need and leave what you don't. Thank you for listening, watching, and subscribing. Let's get into it.
Before we do that,
Yeah.
a weird thing happened last night when I was sleeping.
Where is this going?
It kind of goes into the whole brain thing, but I woke up really early in the morning and it was like 2 a.m. and today is raining when we're filming this. It was raining all last night, but I heard this noise which made me feel like there was like a mouse or a rat, you know, like when you hear those little shuffling feet.
Yeah, there are rats around here.
Oh, there are?
There are rats.
Maybe it was
because the neighbours have chickens. I'm blaming you, neighbour, if you're listening.
Okay, so maybe it was real then.
Probably. Sorry, have I ruined your story?
I thought my mind was like hearing a raindrop like hitting something, but kind of like making that sound. But because you know, when you wake up in the really early in the morning, your brain is just like not functioning. It's kind of in dream state, kind of unconscious, between unconscious and conscious state. I felt like it was creating a story that there was like a rat in the house and I was really trying to listen, but maybe now that was real. Oh my God.
They've never gotten in. So I do want to say that.
Like it was in.
No, okay. We're going to say that was Rain or Saber, the little Pomeranian, because he does not let them live.
Yeah.
They don't live.
There we go.
Yes.
Okay.
Between that and the snakes, they don't survive around here.
Snakes.
Yeah.
No, we're in Australia.
Yeah.
If there's anyone
Australia.
Yeah. Welcome to Australia.
The red bellies that live in your backyard, under your house.
Okay, so that's a thing.
Oh, there you go. My house is very entertaining for you, at least.
Not 2 a.m. in the morning, please.
No,
we can do without that.
No, we can do better. We can do better.
But I thought it was really interesting on like how your mind can just hear sounds and create the story for what it is, especially like when you're half awake, half asleep.
Yeah, and like, okay, this has just brought something to my mind, and I'm like, I'm just gonna ask if this is a thing. Are your ears like super muffled in the morning? Like you genuinely like can't hear things. Like I feel like our ears literally shut down while we're asleep. I'm getting this muffled. Yeah, I can barely hear anything anymore. And then I wake up and I can, but it's like in the middle of the night, it's just so muffled. Or it might be the Pomeranian asleep on my head.
That could be a thing.
Let's go with that.
I mean, I probably wonder if it's a pregnancy thing, or whether again it's that half unconscious, half conscious thing.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll change when I have a baby, because then I'll be on like mama bear. Yes. So I'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
Keep you
so
posted.
off topic today.
I know, right?
Such a great start.
Let's dive into topic. And it's like I actually got this message from you. Like we message our topics when we think of them.
Yeah.
Larissa's been like the genius behind most of them with my brain at the moment. But I got this message from Larissa last week. Was it last week? Yes. Around this topic idea. And I wrote back to her and I was like, the timing of this. And so
we have that though, where we're so like in sync with things. It's like we call ourselves twins at times.
Yes, yes. And so I think, should I go in with the topic? Or so what are we actually
what I wrote to you,
yes,
like we need to do a topic on the truth about daddy issues.
Yes. And for context, for me, I have my dad around once a week for dinner. He's very routine, I'm very routine, so it just works out like that. And he had just left in probably what you would describe as like quite an anxious state, because like something had come up around him and his relationship, and I won't go into details about that, but me and my sister had like basically ended the time of dad here with like her and I like having serious words with him, like her on the phone from Hong Kong and me here with him. And he'd stormed out and I had been like sitting just kind of contemplating what had just happened when Larissa texted.
And I just messaged you.
Yes.
I beamed into your energy.
It's like she knew what was going on for me. And it really like caused me to sit not in depth, but it caused me to sit and really contemplate like, yeah, what are the daddy issues coming up for me right now? Because there's clearly something. And then it kind of, yeah, brought about this topic in a really wonderful and organic way within my brain.
Yeah.
And great timing.
And if we first start with kind of defining like what is a daddy issue or what is like a parent issue, because again, going back to the fundamentals of when you either get into personal development, you go and see a therapist, you go and see a coach, you start to unpack what's going on for you. One of the first and very typical things is that it does lead back to an issue with a parent.
Yes.
Right? And for the female, it's typically, you know, coined a daddy issue. And for the male, it's typically coined a mummy issue.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, and it's very generalized out there as well. So when you're talking amongst your girlfriends or your friends, or you're kind of saying that you've been to therapy or you're going to therapy, or I mean, even I think in movies and comedy, like it's just laughed at and passed away as, oh, she's got daddy issues.
Yes, yes.
So
I
we
think of like
tend to
Barney
internalize it.
Stinson in How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, right.
Like going after these women with daddy issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a thing in that way. But how would you define like that daddy issue or that parent issue?
Yeah, yes. I think like so the way I've heard it or seen it termed, especially on social media or in books recently, is like a father wound or a mother wound. And I think I would term each of those as like consistently unmet needs, like you're perceiving them or they are real, either or both, where yes, one parent in particular has consistently not been able to meet your needs, or not met your needs.
I think that's a really beautiful way to put that.
Yeah, and it tends to be, I think that we do tend to focus on one parent, especially if they're consistently doing it, and that's where our attention is drawn the most. And it does come down to attachment.
Yeah, and this could be that the focus is on emotional needs being unmet, so safety, security, like actually having that connection and that conversation.
Yeah, someone to regulate with and soothe you.
It could be that you feel unmet needs in your house, of like your home environment being safe.
Yes, like physical,
financial, like all these things can kind of come up in different ways when we talk about unmet needs.
Yeah, even spiritual, in like having parts of you denied, or you know, bypassed, told to suppress, punished, essentially. So yeah, it really comes down to that theme, and typically we will see it more in like, you know, oh, it's a father wound, like just the father is doing this, or just the mother is doing this.
Surprise.
It's both.
It's both. And this goes to whether you had two parents at home or whether you didn't, whether you came from even the most loving family, or whether you had parents who separated, or, you know, whatever the family dynamic is. I think it's important to talk about, you know, I know for me, I had, you know, daddy issues. And that was because my father being an alcoholic, which I've kind of mentioned on, and we both mentioned on an episode before, that how that plays out in a household is really loud, you know, so that kind of issue and, you know, all that goes on around it, the chaos that goes on around it when somebody is, you know, emotionally abusive, and, you know, all the other kinds of abuse that come with that, and inside a relationship, that is the loudest thing. But loud for some people, I want to give context to, can also mean an absent parent. If you have a parent who flies away travels for work and they're not present in the house, or if you don't have that other parent in the house and you're in a single parent household, having that void of that person not there can also be loud. Silence can be loud.
Yeah, so it presents in many different ways. And I think like another way of wording that might be like the one that's just more obvious to you. Yeah. And I think we all, when we sit in that therapy session, and, you know, I've certainly done this, I've seen it, like we tend to target one parent in that way because of that loudness or obviousness in the way that they didn't meet our needs, or that we perceived that they didn't meet our needs.
And I know that if you're listening to this episode, well, you are listening to this, not if you are, I know that right now what's coming up for you is that you can see or hear a parent that's specific to you.
Yes. And I want to make very clear here, like, the parent for me that was most obvious was not my dad. So for me, it was actually my mom. And despite the fact that it is more like normalized for a female like myself to have daddy issues, which I, again, it's both, so of course I do, but that was not the one that was most obvious or most loud to me in the beginning. And I know that's common, so I don't want anyone out there to also think like, oh, it has to be a dad if I'm a female, or if you're a male, like, vice versa.
And I think just exactly what you said there, I don't want you to think that it has to be one, like it has to be, the male figure, for example. And that was a discovery for me a couple of years ago. Now my mum has passed away, and I was going through and working with my coach, and I actually had to discover this breaking point where I had to like look at how my mum played a role in, things that were happening in relationships that I was in and that was playing out. And that was really, really challenging for me because my mum has passed, we often protect one parent also because of what her experience was in the household. We can often, be very protective of one parent that we don't want to see or feel or think anything negative, quote unquote, towards them. So it's often hard to confront that side and unpack those issues. And it was for me having to look at, oh my gosh, she's passed away. Like, I want to be respectful. Like, I don't want to say anything bad. She went through so much. She was so brave and courageous. And, if I say anything kind of like negative, if I say kind of, why didn't she leave the relationship earlier on? Because now I've carried on a pattern where, for example, I might not say no early in a relationship. I try and make it work because that's what my mother did. And having to like look at her and look at that side and go, okay, I need to break that cycle. That's not actually a healthy dynamic to stay or to try and make something work.
I can see how challenging that would be, like, because you especially when they're past, you just don't want to have those negative thoughts, and it's not that they have to be negative, but just like it can be really hard to face the dynamic or the patterns that have come from that parent.
And I think even in clients that I've worked with, them even having their parent alive and present equally, that is hard because you still have that connectedness to them, and you don't want to, you're going to have to go through some sort of emotional shift. And they still might be very present in your life, that you start to have questions and you're going through that exploratory curiosity phase to try and dig out, like, what is the pattern, what is the cycle that I need to break? And I have to look at that parent to see that, oh, maybe they didn't do that the right way, and that's actually impacted me. And then we don't want to make them bad, right? So again, I really want to make it clear that no parent is kind of like good or bad, right or wrong. We've got to learn from both.
And if we want to be that generational pattern breaker, which I think most people who come to therapy do, because that's what they're sitting in that chair doing with you most days. We do have to face both. And one might be a lot less clear, a lot less loud, a lot less obvious. We might want to protect them, but we have to face it, or we won't really learn that true dynamic of why we're showing up the way we are in like our relationships or our working relationship, any relationship.
Or money, or with our health. Like even with our health, how our parents both interacted with that, or both how they left that imprint on us around our health. I had one parent that was super active but that was more from a working perspective, and the work was very physical.
Yes.
Versus one parent who wasn't.
Yes.
So how does that play out with each child? Can be
absolutely. Yeah, that's even drawn me around drinking. Like my dad's family and my dad are very into like alcohol and drinking and definitely have a problem. You know, my mum's side, like they're all like, she is just so healthy around that. And always has been, that I've seen. Like, so I think, yeah, it's like, what do you take from each? And you have a way of putting this, I call this the push-pull, like where we either like push right away from the way that one parent does things, or like pull that right in and do it the same.
Yeah, the analogy that I give is the seesaw. Like if you imagine a seesaw, we tend to like go on one side of the extreme and completely ignore or suppress or deny or not want to look at or judge the other side of the seesaw.
Yeah.
And it's not until we decide to look at the other side of the seesaw that we can, and even explore and go into some of those places, that we can actually come back and bring the seesaw to middle ground.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it's, yeah, there's a lot of extreme in why when we're facing resistance, it's often because there's a behavior we're carrying out and we're doing is really extreme. And it's causing that resistance, it's causing us pain, it's causing us suffering. And we need to look at the other side of it in order to find that middle ground and what works for somebody.
Yeah, definitely.
If we go back to the personal side for you, like, I mean, again, going against the trend of, you know, typically if we go into, you know, the fundamentals of what's out there that, you know, somebody having a daddy issue, how did you pinpoint that it was more of a mummy issue?
Yeah. Do you know, I'll even start it with, for so many years, I was like, I don't have issues.
Yeah. Denial
was my best friend. And then like you know, I had all these relationship issues going on. No awareness. And so I ended up obviously going into coaching and therapy, and that helped me uncover that a lot of my patterns around self-doubt, which were quite significant at the time. Like I was walking into work every morning thinking, I can't do this, I'm terrible at my job, etc. I did have a narcissistic boss, so that's not irrelevant, but
that's a whole other episode.
Yeah, this was very much like underlying for me regardless, and was showing up in lots of different patterns of my life, and went into coaching and uncovering that, and you know, really hitting that. For me, I call it like it was like a rock bottom moment, but not that it was rock bottom, it was actually quite elating. Yes. And I can still visualize how that felt and what my mind did in that moment of realizing, and uncovered this, like what, you know, would be called a mother wound. And a lot of that was around, like, my mum was obviously very dedicated. She was like a single mum for so many years, but then she was the parent in my divorced parent dynamic who remarried. And for me, there was like an unconscious, completely unconscious, like abandonment piece around like attention and connection, and just, you know, I think there was always a part of me without realizing that felt like the kid that got left behind. And, you know, I have a sister, full blood-related sister, who I assume has gone through something similar perhaps, but I think it's just something that happens to the children of the first marriage when parents divorce and then a parent moves on. And interestingly, what I've uncovered now in realizing, like, surprise, it's both parents, is that I've also now got this wound, a father wound, around not wanting him to ever like put somebody else first before me and my sister. Like, because he was always present and not single, but, in long-term relationships that were not overly committed,
Mm.
which also probably played into some of my own relationship patterns of commitment. Like I've known that one for a while. Binge drinking also, but just some lovely father wounds coming up. But then I've realized, like, even now there's something that's happened currently that I would consider quite unethical and quite frightening as a daughter who loves her dad. But underline that is a fact that is happening, that my sister and I are working through, like, legally, potentially. But underneath that, there is also for me, like, this reflection of, like, not wanting to be abandoned by daddy, moving on and like marrying, or going into a committed relationship. So it's interesting. It's the same sort of wound around abandonment and attention, but it's played out with both parents, one just a bit more delayed than the other. And I think you have to look at that from the perspective of both parents and how that's affected you. Because, to look at it singularly, you're missing half the piece of the puzzle.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're a whole person because two people made you.
Yes. And I'm affected by the decisions that they both make. And they've both made very different decisions. And I've been affected in different ways, but it does all come down to that abandonment piece.
And I think on that, I mean, I'm just hearing, even reflecting right in the moment.
Yeah, do therapy. Oh, no, for you. Sorry. It's all about me. No.
We can do therapy. But, to talk about kind of a little bit of abandonment, again, it goes down to those needs being unmet. And it's what are those needs being unmet? And a lot of them can come down to, like, attention, belonging, love, and connection.
Yes.
So where you felt abandonment is in attention was going off you into, like, a new parent dynamic with your mum when she did have, another partner. For me, the attention was focused on my dad and his issues that, as a child, that need was being, unmet as well. So there are different skills that you don't develop because the attention isn't on you, that, self-regulating your emotions or building, self-confidence or your self-esteem. Self-esteem is huge when it comes to kind of like daddy wins, mummy wins. All those self-trust. Even all those kinds of things. Even
vulnerability, and connecting authentically to others. I don't think you really learn that when you're feeling like that need isn't met. You maybe don't even learn how to attend to yourself and your own needs, because you feel like no one is attending to them, so they almost don't matter. You take on this core belief of, like, it doesn't matter. I'm not good enough. And I'm not worthy of attention or my needs being met. And
the question of, like, how you even think about that, like, that's a question just to sit with in yourself. Like, what is the how for you? Like, how do I show up? What needs have not been met for me, and how is that impacting me? How is that affecting me? How might that be playing out in my relationship to money, my relationship to myself, that self-worth, self-confidence piece, my relationship to others, my relationship to workplace, to my health, whatever is the thing that's prominent for you right now.
And how it's showing up right now. Yes.
And I think also something that I discovered when I actually had to face, accepting that I needed to kind of look at my mum's side of how she showed up and how that was role modeled back to me, that certain behaviors or things that I've maybe adopted that, are reoccurring themes that are coming up in my relationship dynamic that is not working. Often, what the big thing that came up for me was, feeling that shame, or that I was making one parent right or wrong or good or bad. And it's just not that. We have to actually have compassion towards, they did the best that they could with the resources that they had. And it's now our role that once we're aware of something, it's our role to break that cycle. I think it's Maya Angelou that says, once you know better, do better.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's so good. So do you. We love that.
Yeah.
And that was the piece that I had to face. Now that I know this, it's not about shaming her or making her right or wrong or bad for what she did. She was doing the best that she could with the decisions and the information, the resources, and what she had to make those decisions. They impacted me. Now, what do I do with that information?
Yeah. And does that help you like face the fear of like really facing that, what a parent's done who you've lost? Like, does that actually help with that?
Yeah, it was actually having like compassion towards myself and towards her
Mm.
in it, and realizing that I wasn't trying to make her bad or wrong for the decisions that she made that I didn't agree with,
Yeah.
or that have now impacted me. But it's okay, I know that that's no longer healthy for me. So how am I now going to approach this? What's my new choice going to be? You know, and just to give an example, it is, you know, the people pleaser dynamic, for example, it's definitely coming into setting your boundaries. If you're dating and in relationships, it's deciding to choose to leave a relationship early that's not working for you versus trying to make something work.
Yeah.
Because you've seen, you know, two parents who loved each other, like they were high school sweethearts.
Wow.
So it's that belief of like, that's your forever person, right? And we can often get stuck in that in relationships. So it's, how do I make that work? How do I, you know, we can generalize all relationships have issues. How do I make it work?
Yeah.
Right. But sometimes that approach is actually not healthy.
Yes.
And in my case, what was role model to me was not healthy.
Yeah, like kind of make it work despite
being a really
clear
toxic
issues.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would ripple effect to have more impact.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. How did you approach? Kind of, you obviously
I'm still working through the daddy, the daddy side of the dynamic for me, especially because he's got some serious mental health stuff going on, and he's not the man that he was. So, you know, in that it's not like losing a parent to death, but he is a different person to who he was once. So there has been an element of grieving around that too. And I think that's where a lot of my focus has been for the last 12 years since his mental health really kicked off. But for me, interestingly, learning lessons now with where I'm at in my life has really helped. Like, yes, having awareness and then making different choices has been really great. Learning to rebuild connection has been an important element for me. And that's only really come about, and I've heard lots of people say this, like becoming a mum myself, that's really helping me work through and really appreciate everything my mum did for me and continues to do for me, and just how she shows up. So having compassion for her now around that, really seeing what that other side is like. And then around the dad stuff, I mean, my go-to for childhood wounding or like parental wounding is a tool called limited reparenting, or in IFS, the therapy that I love very much. It's really like a form of inner child work. So where you are becoming the parent that you needed, and you are meeting those needs that the parent didn't meet for you, or that you perceive the parent didn't meet for you. So for example, I'm showing up for myself every day in ways to show myself the attention and love that I didn't feel like I got. You know, and then that means, like, despite whatever choice my dad does end up making, I'm still going to love me. I'm still going to show up for me. So rather than abandoning myself in that way, I'm going to be there no matter what. Yeah, so I'm enjoying that. And I think I actually really think that's going to help me be a better parent. So I think it can help you be a better parent, a better friend, a better colleague, you know, better partner. Yeah.
And better in dating and relationships.
Absolutely.
Better in all facets of relationships.
And they really, like, whether we like it or not, relationships are a huge part of our existence here as humans
Oh, exactly.
versus
You
our
can-
existence as aliens from Mars, right?
She's on a loop.
But I'm letting my brain do what it needs to.
This is pregnancy, third trimester.
Oh, this is 4 weeks out. This is almost there. Yeah.
And so I would sit with and get curious on, you know, if you tend to typically gravitate towards, or notice that you've gravitated towards one parent being an issue, whatever that issue is for you, something you can get curious on is, how did the other parent show up? How did the other parent respond? What was their behavior? What was their kind of language? Because that then you might be able to see a pattern, or you will see a pattern of how they responded, whether they chose to avoid, ignore,
be
passive aggressive, highly reactive. I mean, there's so many different behavioral ways that somebody can respond to those situations. And maybe how have you internalized that? So it's not necessarily that if they were super reactive to it, that you have embodied being reactive. Maybe you've embodied being quiet. You went the opposite way.
Yeah.
But maybe you need to go again to that opposite side and be a little bit more reactive. And there's healthy ways to be that, which, you know, your therapist or your coach can help you with. And again, that's why coaching and therapy is so important.
Yes, definitely. I think addressing these types of wounds and really breaking generational patterns, it really helps to have support, especially so that you don't go into shame or blame. And think about blame. You know, we blame another parent or another person in other dynamics to protect ourselves from shame anyway. So it's really at the root of it, it's coming down to not going into shame. Yeah.
We might do an episode on shame, I think.
That would be
healthy. That would be a really positive one to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the core of a lot of the problems that people present with.
And we can build up so many protective barriers around it.
Yeah. Let's leave that for the episode.
Let's do it. I need some water. So thank you for listening, watching, and subscribing. We really hope you enjoyed this episode. At Surprise It's Both. Yeah.
And take the time to get curious, and do not make either parent right or wrong, good or bad, or yourself. You know, you can have compassion, but get curious on how those behaviors showed up and how it might be playing out for you. That can be a breakthrough for you. We'll see you next time. Next episode. Bye.